let me review or revisit what we were starting to talk about, what was left in the ACM code that you were not asked to read. And the first part of that in part 3 has to do with the public good, and there's a lot of stuff in there that focuses on this idea that the public good is a central concern at all times. I mentioned a laundry list, and as I read it, it just went through, that is, the code itemized a whole bunch of phases of the system, what's called the system development life cycle, and anything else that they could think of. But the point that they were trying to make is that in every one of these phases, or in anything that you do, you have to be concerned for the public good. I mean, that's it. And so they said there isn't really any phase of software development where that's not a concern. And it doesn't matter what kind of methodology you have, whether it's the traditional one that has all those phases, or whether you don't have some of those phases and you have other phases, whatever methodology you use, the concern for the public good is the big thing. And then in terms of social responsibilities, people don't always think about social responsibility as part of what their job is. And so it's the job of a leader in this area to point that out to people, to be concerned for the social good and point out to people that that's an important thing. So whatever it is that you're doing, you should express that to people, encourage other people to do that. And then the other part, which is a little surprising perhaps, is to put into place checks that make sure that it's happening. So you're looking at things that are being done in software as not only satisfying requirements from a technical point of view, but also checking somehow that they do this public good sort of thing. And then there's a section on the quality of life. I mentioned about death marches, but the bigger thing in this area is the idea of professional development, or any kind of development of staff that a leader is responsible for. I mean, you cannot just have staff that are going to stagnate with current ideas and current technology. And you know that you're not going to stagnate. You know that we're trying to prepare you to be very flexible and be ready to run with new ideas and new technologies as they emerge. And you want anybody that you're working with to also be thinking in that way. So enabling professional development, also enabling accessibility for people that you're working with and certainly people that you're programming for. Safety and psychological well-being and human dignity are also factors to be concerned about. And the code says these are important things. Already talked about this, but not only in the technical point of view do you have to provide professional development, but also people should be encouraged to study areas that have to do with ethical considerations in computer science or in IT or in any technical area that you gravitate toward, as well as professional development that you might not consider to be computer science per se. For example, you may be sent to a course to develop yourselves as managers or as someone who needs an additional skill of some kind that's really part of the business world. And it's not a technical skill per se, but it's something that you may need to do. All of these are professional development opportunities. And then finally, there's a section about talking or considering special issues that come up when software is being retired or when you are significantly modifying a system. The idea is that people get accustomed to using a particular piece of software and they like the way it works, and when you yank the rug out from under them and make it different from what it is or replace it entirely with something else, you really should anticipate their feelings on this. They're not going to be particularly happy. So working with them is important, communication with them, and anticipating that there are going to be some things that they're going to be unhappy about, and especially if you're retiring their software. So that's kind of tricky. I'm not sure that there's any formula for this, but they especially deserve to know the reasons why their favorite software is being changed. And it's probably for some good reason, but they need to be, at least in my philosophy, they should be involved in that process. And many of the software methodologies that I support are big in terms of including the users in this development, so that they're part of the decision-making process. But in any case, they really need to be part of the conversation, and they deserve to know why things are being changed. Finally, there's some stuff about taking care of systems that are integrated into society. The point is made that even when a system is very, very simple, when it gets integrated in a useful way, whether it's with an educational organization or whether it's a company that manufactures things, whatever it is, the software is actually integrated into the operation of something. You need to take care about what kinds of ethical concerns exist, and also whether that integration actually ends up excluding people. It's not something that we tend to think about very often, but when software works and it's used, then we tend to have people who are insiders. They use it, they become accustomed to it, they become good at it, but we never think about the fact that there are other people who never got that opportunity to learn about the software, and that we inadvertently end up excluding them. So this particular section makes us, or calls our attention to the idea that we need to be considering what kinds of things happen when we succeed. Our software is integrated, yay, but there are other ethical concerns that emerge. Oh yeah, there was one more part, compliance. So yeah, you should promote, uphold, and respect the principles of the code, and contribute toward improving it, which is an interesting thing. The code is not a static document. It's being modified all the time, and you might participate in modifying it. So there's a call here to participate in that. Express concerns to violators when reasonable. So the code doesn't go out on a limb and say, okay, you've observed something that is problematic. You really see something bad going on. You have an obligation to go and call people out on this, but the code recognizes that doing so can be very risky. And so if it's unreasonable, maybe not. There's a balance of concerns. And they don't give you a formula for doing this. But there is a section of what to do in terms of violations when the ACM itself can be involved. And there's an entire other area that is called the enforcement procedures that are also connected to this webpage that I wasn't even aware of until I prepared this. But it's at least as long as the code itself that you all read, including this part. The enforcement procedures are that long, and it's written a lot in legalese, but they talk about what you can do if you need to report something within the ACM structure. And so they will form a group, and they have all the regular the things that you might expect from the legal world to make that all possible. And you're welcome to, the slides are there online. You can click through from there, or you can find the link on the side of the page for the ACM code that takes you to these enforcement procedures. But it is rather long, and it is a process, and it results in some kind of action. And whether the action has any teeth in it or not can depend on where it's being applied. But at least there is an action, and it may be worth taking a look at, depending on what other things you do in terms of this course or in terms of the future. Anyway, that's all I've got for compliance. Actually, with those last two sections of the code, you need to be aware of them, and that is it. I'm going to stop